Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make an ice-dyed mandala, and let's do this one a little bit different. I'm going to start by centering the shirt, and this process is going to go really fast. But down below this video in the description for the video is a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is getting both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other and both halves of the back of the shirt right up next to each other. That way, whenever the shirt is dyed, the front is going to look pretty much the same on both halves and the same for the back. So to fold the mandala, the first thing I'm going to do is use a washable marker and make a mark where I'd like the center of the mandala to be. I like to place my centers just a little bit below the armpit of the shirt. Then using a straight edge, I'm going to place it on the mark that I just drew on the shirt and fold the hem of the shirt up, making a seam where that mark is. Now I'm going to grab the hem of the shirt and fold it partway down. I'm going to remove the straight edge and pinch the new seam or fold that I just formed. And when I do and I lift the shirt up off the table, it's going to fold the top portion of the shirt down. The side that's facing me has two folds. I'm going to grab that side and fold it one more time and do the same thing with the other side. Okay, so here's where I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to use my straight edge and a washable marker, and I'm going to make a line straight down through the center of this mandala fold. Then I'm going to fan fold this line. And of course the fan folds are going to be really large because this is a pretty thick fold. Now here's where it kind of got a little bit difficult. I just want to hold the folds in place. I don't necessarily want definition lines, so I'm going to start out trying to use some kite string. I did end up putting a rubber band around the shirt too, because it's a bulky fold, it's awkward, it's a strange shape, so it was a little bit difficult to tie this one. Well, the tying isn't pretty, but I finally got there, and the folds are held in place. Because it is so thick and bulky, I'm going to go ahead and put this shirt aside and allow it to dry out completely before I dye it. If you'd like a little more information about why I like to dye really thick folds like this when they're completely dry, I have a blog post out on my website, and I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. Okay, so the shirt has been sitting there probably about 2 weeks, so it is completely dry. And I've chosen some purples and some reds to use on this mandala. I'm going to do quite a few new things with this one, so I decided to incline it. I have a plastic tub or tote, and I have a shelf that has a collapsible leg. So I'm going to collapse one leg of the shelf, place the shirt on the shelf, and then place the shelf down inside of the plastic tote. I need to make myself an ice barrier, and not only will the ice barrier keep the ice on the shirt, it will hopefully keep the shirt on the shelf. I started out using my silicone cake molds around the shirt. I wrapped them around the shirt and then held them up close to the shirt by attaching wooden clothespins to the metal rack. However, my silicone cake molds aren't quite tall enough. They're about the same height as the shirt. So I need to make something a little bit taller to keep the ice around the shirt. So for that, I decided to use some pieces of plastic cutting board, which I purchased from the Dollar Tree dollar store. I'm going to place the plastic cutting board in between the shirt and the silicone cake molds. In theory, the silicone cake molds are going to hold the plastic cutting board up close to the shirt, and the whole thing is going to stay in place because I've attached the wooden clothespins to the rack. If you happen to live in a really cold environment and get a lot of snow, this is a perfect design to use snow on. That way you don't have to build these semi-elaborate ice barriers. It's always a challenge to build an ice barrier for odd-shaped items like this one. Okay, so now I have an ice barrier built, and now I'm going to spray the top of the shirt with the soda ash solution that I've placed inside of a spray bottle. This is going to help the dye to stick to the shirt a little bit better and not just fall down into the container below. Before I placed the shirt aside to dry out, I drew on some chevron type shapes with my washable marker. That's where I'm going to apply the dye. But because I have the shirt inclined, you're going to see it's not really going to stay within those lines very well. This mandala is just a fun experiment. If I actually wanted to keep the dye within those lines, I would go ahead and lift up this other leg of the shelf, and I would not incline it. I would apply the dye while the shirt was flat. Okay, so I'm going to alternate using reds and purples because I like that combination. I'm starting in the first little section with Fire Red from Dharma Trading Company. And as you can see, I'm having a few issues with my ice barrier. So I'm going to remove some of the clothespins, readjust it a little bit, and go back to applying dye. Next, I'm using Hydrangea from Dharma, followed by Cardinal Red, and lastly, I'm using Deep Purple. These are all Dharma Trading Company colors. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top and add on some ice. After this first layer of ice melted, I came back, and because this is a super thick fold, I went ahead and just added a second layer of ice. After the second layer of ice melted, I came back and I looked underneath at the bottom part of the shirt, and it looked like it was pretty well saturated, so I just left the shirt alone and I allowed it to process for about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. So to rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water. And as you can see, when I flip the shirt over, it's pretty well saturated throughout. After rinsing in cold for a while, I went ahead and warmed the water up to hot, continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Then I untied the shirt, and instead of just continuing to rinse for a long time, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, placed a little bit of Blue Dawn dish detergent in the water, and put the shirt in to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out, and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt into my washing machine along with a little bit of Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent, and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks kind of funky. I don't exactly know what I was expecting. Like I said, I was just messing around to see what would happen, and I think it looks pretty cool. So like I mentioned earlier, I really like the combination of purple and red together. And so I like the colors, and I think it's cool how I've got that dye flow from inclining the shirt, how it's kind of streaming out of that center part. And right in the middle of that mandala area in the center, it looks like an upside down butterfly to me, which I think is kind of strange. But the top part of the shirt is definitely lighter than the bottom part because that was the part of the fold that was on the inside of the shirt. But because I centered the shirt, when you're looking at the front of the shirt or you're looking at the back of the shirt, even though the top portion is lighter, both halves of the front of the shirt look the same. Honestly, when I look at this shirt, because the bottom portion is a little bit darker than the top, I think it almost looks like a horizon line, and this could be a mirage of some kind or something reflecting off of water or something. I don't know. If it was done in different colors, I think you would definitely get more of that effect. As far as the color splits, I think the way the colors look is really cool. You know, I do have color splits because the fire red splits out that yellow color. And then the purples are just purples. So they, have all kinds of cool shades in there. I just think it's really interesting to look at. At first, when I unwrapped it, I thought, wow, this is a lot. And then I kind of paid attention to it more as I was ironing it and then photographing it. And the more I've looked at it, the more I think it's really cool looking. I really like that streak of the dye down on the bottom portion of the shirt. I just think that's a really cool, almost like lightning effect. The red lines, which I think is really funky and cool. So I just noticed I've used the word cool a whole lot in this description. So obviously you know that I like the shirt, but what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.